Welcome back to Fitness or Fiction, the podcast that is about exposing hype and getting away from said hype. Today on the podcast, we have Mr. Andre Skinner, as in Skinner from The Simpsons. He's not a principal, though. This is a very good fellow that we have been working with for some time. We're going to talk to him about his specific journey in the fitness industry, and then we're going to start getting through exactly what being a member of that industry as a personal trainer and now a therapist is like for him. So stay tuned.
So we're going to start with a brief summary of Dre. Dre, summarize yourself in one sentence.
One sentence?
Holy, that's tough.
I don't.
How about like 15
Whatever
sentences.
you want, however many sentences you want.
I would describe myself like I was an athlete. I still consider myself an athlete, and kind of more into that transitioning into like more of a life fitness coach, because I like to help people become the better version of themselves, but not just through training anymore. Like it becomes more of a mind-body connection, very holistic and everything like that. So I just like to make sure I have people following not just their dreams, but listening to the fact that like not every dream is going to come true. You got to be able to scale it back and really attack your weaknesses so your strengths become your best parts about you.
So if we go chronologically, basically what we're here to do is get your story. These sessions, I've talked to a few people already that are like, it's really relatable to talk to other people's experiences. So we're going to go chronologically. How did you get involved in fitness originally? What that process has been like? What your career path has been like, and all that sort of stuff. But let's start with
Child Dre. Was Child Dre into sports? Was he a beast on the playground? Did he win tag all the time?
I actually, when I was 9, I've been the same height since I was 9, but I've always had like muscles. So like I was very athletic growing up. And so me thinking to myself, I was going to be like the best athlete ever because no one else could touch me. No one else could ever beat me up on the playground. So I thought I was going to be that top dog forever. And then obviously once you start watching your friends get tall, then you're like, okay, maybe there's got to be something wrong with this picture because I was supposed to be that guy. And I think what really pushed me to actually get into fitness was when I was playing football. And when I started playing football, you hit an age where everyone's going to be bigger, stronger than you, so you have to start working out. And when I was 13, I realized I was getting bullied when I was trying to block people, and I hated that. And so the next year I went to Peak, and that's where I met Curtis. And I decided, I'm going to try to get into strength and conditioning because I wanted to be the better version of a running back than I was. And that's kind of like really sparked everything. And it's weird because the guy who invited me, I always used to beat him in a race. And there was no question about it. But this one time after him training, he was actually faster than me. And that's what really set the fire underneath me.
Who was it?
It was Josh Urquhart.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do you have his address? I can go pay him.
Yeah, go pay him. I haven't seen him in forever, but I remember we ran to the bus, and he had beat me by at least 10 meters running to the bus. I'm like, this kid has never beaten me, and I could be running backwards faster than him. And I was like, okay, shows me that the training that he was doing was paying off. So I was like, okay, if it's going to help him with his performance, it's got to help with mine. So that's kind of how I got into fitness.
So social proof drove you there. This isn't the normal story. This is cool. So I forgot that we met at Peak Power. I associate you so much with the gyms and stuff that I forgot like that we met at Peak Power. So you had already gotten to the point on your own that you were looking at, I need to do something so that I can stay competitive. And then the thing that like as a little bit of paprika on the side was like, okay, so there's people that are undergoing this training process and here's the results they're having.
Yeah, exactly.
Sick. That's a cool origin story. Okay, so where next? So that's how you got involved in fitness, and Peak was your first, Peak Power.
Yeah, Peak Power was my first experience of.
Did you get to do any sessions with Henrik?
I did a handful of them because that's where I actually started Olympic lifting.
Yeah, of course.
Even though I was painful as mechanically as I was because I couldn't do the bar for the first couple of sessions, I was really bought into the philosophy and the theory of it because I wanted to be more explosive and to learn technique, and it actually kind of really turned on that monster inside me because I was like, if I can be bigger, faster, stronger, then everybody else, even at the same height, then not only will those people would have to respect me for being shorter but stronger than them, but they will have to look at me as a threat because they're like, I don't want to get run over by this kid who's half my size.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's what really pushed me to get into the Olympic lifting, the powerlifting, and to really focus on speed and agility.
So Eric's got a question for you, but just before I forget. So you said when you were 9 years old, you were the same size you are now?
Yeah, pretty much. Same height.
How tall are you?
5'6.5".
Okay. When I was 9 years old, I was 3'10". I have a trading card from baseball that shows that. My son in grade 2 is taller and heavier than I was in grade 4, and he loves it. Yeah. Anyways, that's a side note. Who cares?
Like, so for me, what I'm hearing though a lot of is like when you're saying like, well, when you were younger, you were shorter, and that like when guys got taller than you like took that as intimidation, almost like, oh damn, they're gaining advantage over me, right?
Absolutely.
Like for me as a tall person, like I'm 6'1", I was always like actually more afraid of the guys who are like a little bit more stacked, because I'm like, they're built more solid than the tall guys. Like as I played football in high school too, and like playing football junior high school, like the taller guys, I felt like I could break them apart because I could run really fast and I could hit really hard. But like the guys who are a little bit smaller, those were the guys that intimidated the crap out of me, because I'm like, man, if I hit those guys, they don't move. Like I hit them and I fall down. So I don't know if that's just a different perspective.
I think it's different because when you're 6'1", no one looks down on you, right? When you're 5'6", just hear me out. Because when you're 5'6", the whole world is looking down on you.
Yeah.
Right. Regardless if they have respect for you or not, it's the feeling of someone looking down on you and smiling, and that's like, why are you smiling? Because it's like, if I was 6'6", 260, you wouldn't have that smile on your face.
Yeah.
Right. But that's what really, I think, is the other negative part of the fitness journey, is because there was always a point to prove. Like I always had to be in my head. I thought to myself, I'm 6'3", 220. Right. Yeah. I'm 6'3", 220, but I'm not going to be that way physically, but I have to mentally be that way, because when you have guys constantly being like, oh, you're short, but you're really fast, or it's always a backhanded compliment with it, right? You never wanted to have a backhanded compliment with it, so you always wanted to make sure that like you leave it out of the question.
When you're pretty strong for a little guy.
Yeah. Exactly.
I get that for being skinny.
Oh, no.
You're really strong for skinny. You're really wiry. Oh, snap.
Yeah.
When you say people look down on you, are you talking mentally or like physically? Like the physicality of somebody like peering down on you?
It goes both ways, because when you're in a physical competition with somebody, someone thinks, what is this short guy going to do to me? Especially when you're doing jiu-jitsu or you're actually in the ring fighting against somebody, right? Like, but when even just walking and being introduced to people, like in a business setting, and having these guys who are higher up look down on you, like it's intimidating, because you feel like you're surrounded by giants, and only giants could exceed to that kind of level. So it's like, how do I play on the same level field as everybody else when everyone else is just physically looking down on me, like as if what heights can you actually reach from down there? Right? And then maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but like it's a mentality that you kind of grow up with, because it's like, I need to have my success or my shadow cast such a great distance that it looks like I'm a giant.
Yeah, it's weird. I'm only leaning on this topic just out of like perspectives of like being 6'1". I was short and then I shot up like out of nowhere. And even like a 6'1", the difference of perspective of looking down on someone small, like shorter or smaller, whatever you want to slice it, looking down, it's not that much. Like when if I'm walking around with you guys and I'm 6'1", you guys are a little bit shorter than me, I don't feel like I'm towering over you guys, like, or I don't feel like I'm the big tall dog in the room. Like, I actually feel like we're all the same size, like to me personally. But there's a hell of a difference if I look up at somebody. So when I'm 6'1", and if like a 6'6" guy comes up behind me, I'm like, what the F? Like the perspective of looking down up is totally different than looking down.
Yeah, fair.
I've just like said this randomly to people who don't like being shorter, I guess.
It's interesting how that kind of presses your mentality of like, this is what it felt like, regardless of what the reality was. Here's what it felt like. I was worried about, and that kind of drove your fitness journey. For me, it's always an interesting thing talking about like, well, the physical output versus the mental output, because our movement foundations are built and then our prefrontal cortex is built. So the two usually overlap. It's really interesting. But something that's cool there is that you've got like this negative thing you're trying to get away from, and then you've also got that positive side where you saw somebody that was achieving and you went towards that. So what's the next step? So you were at peak power. You were doing training there. You got to meet the legendary Henrik, my
Did
grandpa.
you notice like big results?
I did. I noticed that I could physically go pound for pound with a lot of people, especially with blocking and transitioning into wrestling and stuff like that. I was able to hold my own against guys who were much bigger or had longer levers than me. And so
Don't look at me like that.
so I'm just saying, but it felt like I could actually compete at a higher level instead of feeling like, oh, this is where my cap is because I can't run as fast, or I can't bench as much, or I won't be able to have the same endurance to catch up to a lot of these guys, especially when it came down to track and doing 200, because everyone doing 200 meters was at least 6 foot, right? And and just stride length are going to catch me at some point, right? So it's like I want to be able to at least run with these guys. So if there ever was a competition that like with the guys at my height, I know I can at least take them. But and that was the same thing when it came down the track. So you know Akeem Haynes, right? So Akeem was the first guy I ever lost a race to. But me and Akeem are very similar in height and body type. So for his legs are probably twice the size as mine. And when I lost my race to him, that actually changed my perspective. Okay, so there is someone who looks like me, but who is on a completely different platform of skill or just God-given talent. So I was like, okay, so there has to be a middle ground at some point. So he does not the tallest, but no one could touch him. So like I had to be able to compete with those guys, the taller guys, the faster guys, and it really made a difference in almost everything that I did. And changed how I actually studied in school as well, just trying to, I wasn't the best at memorization, but it was like I have to be the best of what I can be, and that's just outworking everybody else, right? Teach yourself to be a good student the same way you would teach yourself how to do Olympic lifting, right? And just repetitions all over.
I think that's huge, man. Like even watching my kids, they're just little guys, like 7 and 4, the 1-year-old even, when they see this connection, when you can show them directly a connection between you can't do this, you put in work consistently, and you go through some challenges, of course, but as you put in that work, you get this result. Like my 4-year-old, he's up skiing in the mountains with me on his own. Like he's cash money, but him being able to ski isn't that important to me. Mm-hmm. But you watch the way that he walks off the mountain after he's learned something new, and like the pride and it's like this ingrained trust in himself that he knows that he can do something, and it's a physical transcending fact that he's capable of that. And I see pride all over it, and it's really important. Mm-hmm. So it's cool to hear that from a different perspective. So your early training was pressing a lot towards performance and that sort of thing. Two kind of things. How did you end up moving and making the jump to being a personal trainer? And was it always about performance? Like how did that process go? Like did it stay there until you became a trainer? Or?
So how I ended up being a trainer was more about what happened in my life after football. Because after I stopped playing, that was been my identity for almost over half my life at that point. And I didn't realize how much that was going to affect me mentally. And so I started gaining weight because I was eating the same amount like I would like as if I was still playing. And I didn't realize like how much weight I was actually gaining until I tried to do some of the things that I wanted to do. Like I would try to play flag or just play like a quick pickup game of rugby, or even just run around with my friends. And I realized like, man, I can't even do 40 meters without being gassed anymore. And then my mom told me I should probably lose some weight if I wanted to go hang out with my friends. And so I was like, you know what?
Wow, Mom.
Yeah, seriously. She checked me on it. I was
Shots
like, you
fired.
know what? Fine.
Yeah.
You know what? I'll go back, and went back to Peak. And ironically, I met Arshia, Rosie, and Crystal, and they actually were powerlifting at the time. And I was just trying to just get back into it, go back to my roots with like strength conditioning and sprinting and stuff like that. And once they like, you should test yourself, your strength-wise. And I was like, okay, I'll start powerlifting with you guys. And over that summer, I had a bunch of people, when I was posting my videos, be like, hey, you should train me. I had at least 20 people over that summer be like asking me to train them. And it kind of sparked like what I wanted to do. like how do I stay inside the gym but turn it into a career now? Like not being an athlete might be looking as like the option, like I'm not going to be a professional athlete, but maybe I could still train professional athletes at some point in my career. And so that's what kind of sparked the line for me to be like, you know what, I'll get certified and I'll see where this road goes.
So what was the early experience like? So having been in the big box gym and having the roles that I did in the development stuff, I remember the first year was tough. The second year got significantly easier, but I didn't stay just specifically doing training for that long. I moved into the management side and the director side and the education side pretty quick. What was your experience like in the first couple
Choose
years?
your words carefully.
Well, honestly, like I loved my first year because it was so new to me, right? And learning the industry, learning how to run your own business, meeting new people was always like a great part of my personality. So just trying to share my experiences with new people, what I think was what really kept me going my first year, and just learning the new education. You guys really did push like continuing education courses on us a lot. So it wasn't like I was gonna run into a stagnant hole where I was like, okay, well, like I've been here 6 months, I haven't learned anything new. I don't know what else I could be adding value to for my clients. So having my first year with you guys was great because I learned more about functional training rather than like sports specific training.
Yeah.
Right. And then that's what made it easier for me to connect with the general population rather than just with athletes. And so it was nice to have like that overlooking perspective of be like, yeah, you're doing this well, but we're going to add this to you. We're going to teach you how to do this so you can be better at that. And that's what made it really easy for me to really be bought into the system. And that when I left to go to Good Life, I realized, especially with mega corporation gyms, that not every team is built the same. And that was my next big thing, was when I realized coming over there was 7 bodybuilder trainers. There's 2 strength and conditioning guys there, right? And the other guy, he was very wishy-washy. So it was like, I don't know what your training process is. Like, you were good enough to like be the top dog there, but like, what are you training for? Because you're not training these people for specific sports that you've played for, so you can't really relate to them. So that was my thought process behind it. But everybody else was just bodybuilding. So everyone was peaking at the same time, doing the same workouts, doing the same nutrition plan. So, and when I would talk about education, it was like they were learning more from me at that time. And some of these guys have been trained for like 8 years, 10 years. I was like, how do you not know about these things, right? Because they're so niche oriented with just who they are. Like you don't see bodybuilders ever doing mobility stuff, right? Or you don't see them really doing any explosive work to keep loading into the right position. So like if you're compromised here, this will make you better if you can do that. They're just about like bigger, faster, get more vascular.
Burn.
Yeah, exactly, right? So it kind of showed, and that's what showed me that like not having the right team will set your environment and your learning environment much to like set your ceiling a little bit higher, instead of feeling like, oh, I'm with people who are in a sport that is very one-dimensional, so there's not much you can learn from it if that's not what you want to be doing.
What was like your biggest challenges when you first got into the industry?
My biggest challenge was the work-life balance, because I think this is a problem with a lot of big gyms, that they sell this dream that you can have this perfect work-life balance. It's essentially that like, oh, you could train 8 hours and do this, and then like you could go out, but in reality, you're a slave to other people's time.
Yeah.
Right. And when someone can't come in, you have to reschedule, and you have that spot there, you're either staying an hour later or you're pushing your entire day back just for one person. Or if you don't have a full schedule and you only have a couple, you're there all day regardless, because there's no point in leaving because you only have a few hours in between. So we want and that was my biggest challenge, was trying to find, how do I don't burn myself out mentally, because I really loved training people at the time, and how do I make it so I'm actually successful financially? And I think that was the biggest challenge for that.
What was the best part?
Honestly, the best part was hanging out with the boys. Honestly, like having that first year crew was awesome. I don't think I've ever had more fun training with people and learning from them and just testing other people's skills to see like where do I line up with everyone else? Like what can I bring? What can I learn from somebody else? I think that was probably the best part, was just experiencing it for the first time and knowing that like everyone there is on the same mission. No one there is trying to do something completely different or has a different mindset of just being there for the money. Everyone wants to like, hey, we're all in competitions. We're all doing some sort of sport outside. We all want to help people get towards their goals. So it's like, it's either you're either in the huddle or out the huddle at that point, right? There's no individualism in terms of like how you want to train, in terms of how you want to work with everybody else that you're with.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that have gone the road of personal trainer that 80% of people don't make it out of the first 6 months. Yeah. This is an industry statistic that's been kind of consistent for a while. Liking the gym and liking teaching people how to exercise is very different in some ways. And when you say things like I'm a slave to other people's schedules, like not all business models are set up to deal with that fact appropriately. And that's tough. That is tough. What I've found is the biggest challenges with trainers that I've seen, they think, well, I like the gym, I want to do this, but they don't realize that it's not you doing gym. It's not you doing gym. Yeah. It's the other people. You got to like showing other people and seeing the results from them and feel deep fulfillment in that. Because if you don't, it's not worth it, man. Like, it's tough. It is tough. But the other side of it too, just getting to be around people and various different types of people, not only clientele, but your staff, like the people that are around you and building the team and pulling in the same direction to inspire people. Those are some really good times.
Mm-hmm.
So,
absolutely.
That team and community though, like that environment for me was pretty amazing, I think. And it was like that for a long time. Not even just when I was managing it, but even before I was managing it, it kind of felt the same. It always changes and fluctuated, but I think that was like a really special thing.
We pushed hard to keep that together. It was good for a long time. That was good.
Yeah.
So we got through, biggest challenge, biggest success as far as being a trainer and all that sort of thing. As far as your actual journey of exercise and whatever, what were the kind of the highs of it and the lows of it? And basically I want you to loop something in with each one of these. Mm-hmm. So the high, like the best thing about training yourself or your best experiences with being engaged in the training process, but also the most valuable kind of thing for somebody to focus on. If there's one thing that you run into that was like really fantastic, what's that?
The one thing that I would have to say is never be afraid to have someone overlook your work. I think that was probably the best thing that I've learned, because you're not going to know everything and you shouldn't know everything. And if you think that something is going wrong or if it's going right, you want to have someone double check it, because you want to make sure that like your thought process is not out to lunch, or you're not going to run into any injuries as well. And I think having people that knew more about the industry and about program design and everything like that made it me, again, buy in a lot more, because it's like, okay, I don't know everything. So here I have a chance to learn. I can either take this as an opportunity, like this person is challenging me in my education or my intelligence, or this person just is challenging me to be a better version of myself so I can be the best trainer that I can put forward. And I think that really depends on like where your ego is at as well. Like I think a lot of people walk into the industry thinking that like, oh, I'm going to be the next big influencer and then everyone's going to follow me and this and that, and they can't even cue you through a proper lunch, right? And it's like, well, if you can't cue, you might as well learn how to do it and learn it from somebody who knows how to do it properly, right? And I think that's where a lot of new trainers they get freaked out, is that like they don't know a lot about what basic movements are or program design or anything like that, and so they shut themselves down because they've already put this wall up, like I already know everything, there's nothing more I can learn.
Can't fill a glass that's already full, baby.
Yeah, we actually podcasted on that. That was called the Dunning-Kruger effect. Yes. Do you know what the Dunning-Kruger effect is?
Indubitably.
It's like this fancy little graph that talks about your learning process. So like if you were bodybuilding in the gym for like when you're 18 to 21, it's like, wow, you think you're super smart because you got some results and you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then so it's like your skill base goes really high and you're like, wow, I'm the smartest guy in the room. But then the longer you kind of stay in that subject, you'll start to be like, oh man, this matzo ball is bigger than I thought it was. And then your confidence starts to go down. Even though you're getting smarter, your confidence drops because the book opens up and like, it's like a car engine. It's like, I know how to drive a car, but when you crack open the engine and start pulling it apart, you're like, whoa, there's way more pieces in here than I thought there was. So confidence goes down even though you're smarter. So guys who've been in the industry for 5 years might have lower confidence than a guy who's just starting out, but they're going to be way smarter after 5 years. And that guy has like a false sense of confidence or intelligence, I guess. And like the longer you're in it, like, and then it slowly peaks back up again, but it doesn't hit that same high that you're like, oh man, I know everything.
Yeah.
Triceps, the biggest muscle in the body, like the biggest muscle in the arm. You just got to keep pumping triceps. You get huge arms. I pumped triceps so much at 18, my arms never got huge.
They just got sore.
So that was half of the question. We got kind of so humility is a really important thing, and not mistakenly thinking that your cup is full, we'll say. That's good. I like that. I align with that, obviously. But as far as your athletic endeavors, like your actual training process for yourself, what's the biggest thing that you would tell somebody? Because I have people come to me all the time and be like, what supplement should I take? I'm like, get consistent on your exercise. So what's like the biggest kind of fact that you've run into that's like, I wish more people knew that?
I think the biggest fact is that it doesn't turn around in a month or even in a year. And it requires more consistency and dedication that you want to admit, because you have to put yourself into uncomfortable situations to be comfortable doing the thing that you want to do, especially if it's brand new. There's a lot of people who, especially that I see, like these high school kids, they fail a deadlift and they just like, I'm never deadlifting again. It's like, that's not the attitude you want to be taken that to. You want to be able to dissect what was the thing that went wrong and the thing that you did well, right? And then focus on the things that were going wrong, make them better. And then the thing that's going well will eventually start to move up, and it's like climbing a ladder. You can't put 2 feet in front of the other one, right? You have to be able to climb one step at a time. And so if you take it day by day, you listen, like the process, like if you just trust in the process is basically what I would like to say is probably the better thing that I wish a lot of people would just figure out. Because the commitment level from anyone, especially like if you're going to give up on a piece of homework, you're going to give up on your fitness, right? And so if you can't stay committed to anything, especially when things get tough, you're not going to see the results that you're looking for. I think that's my biggest thing, is that you want to keep that process, that commitment level, that dedication level high, because it's going to become a lifestyle, right? It's not like you picked up a video game one day, you were godlike at it, and then you're like, yeah, I'm never going to touch this again because no one can touch me again, right? But it's like you keep practicing it, you come back to it, you practice it, you come back to it, and you challenge yourself, right? That's the reason why we have competitions, right? If we didn't have competitions, there'd be no point in having numbers or anything like that towards it. We'd just be lifting numbers in the gym and putting our numbers on the wall, right? And that's where I think a lot of people need to understand, is that like you have to be bought in, committed, and trust what your coach is telling you, what you're wanting to do, and trust your intuition and how to get there.
You know, my favorite question of this podcast is, what's the biggest BS advice or hype topic you've ever come across in the industry that's just complete wash?
Two sides of that. As a PT, as a person exercising. Yeah, I want two answers, because Eric loves this question and I support him.
As a PT, is when I think the biggest lie as a PT that anyone can really tell is that you could get to your goals in a specific time frame, because we're not accounting for added stresses outside, the future stresses that might come in, right? Like you tell someone, I can get you 30 pounds under in 2 months, right? But you don't know how that person lives. That person's parents could be dying tomorrow, right? And then they put on 60. No, just a dark world.
That's aggressive.
It is aggressive, but like you don't know, so you set this person up for disaster by setting them a time frame and a time limit, being like, hey, we're gonna hit this by this time, but we're not gonna, not gonna account for possibly your girlfriend leaving you, or possibly you losing your job, or this, that, and the other. So you have to give a realistic outtake, and I think it really comes with experience when you talk to any brand new client, being like, hey, like, I understand this is your goal. It is a possible goal, but we have to account for how your lifestyle. If you have a very chaotic lifestyle, you have to crush that in. If you run a very basic lifestyle, then sure, you might be able to maneuver and get your goals a little bit quicker because you're going to be more focused on just that. But if you're traveling for work, or you have, no disrespect, but if you have 3 kids and they're all doing different things at different ages, right? It's very tough for you to focus on yourself and like be like, yeah, my goal is to like eat 1,800 calories in the next hour, but you have to feed your kids, you only get 500, so now what? You're 1,300 calories behind, right? And then that screws up your nutrition plan, right? So it's very tough to focus on those things if other things are taking your discipline away from you.
I used to tell clients when we like periodize them over their 3-month or 6-month process, I would say, like, if all the stars align, this is what you could achieve, and this is potentially where you could be. Like, it might be nothing, right? But honestly, as trainers, I disliked it when people would be like, oh yeah, my personal trainer was garbage. I signed up for 3 months training, and I got nowhere. I got nothing. If you see a trainer 1 time a week for 1 hour, 1 hour is less than 1% of that day. Or no, it's 4% of that day, sorry.
Yeah.
4% in a week, that's less than 1% a week. It's probably less than 0.5%. So the trainer's influence on that person is 0.5% during that week.
Yeah.
And the other 99.5% is 100% on them, on what they can accomplish, right? Mm-hmm. So
I like that math. That other 99% is 100% on them.
Works every time, 66, 7% of the time.
It made total perfect sense, but it did sound funny.
I like that.
Okay, so that's as a PT. I think it's super important to think about, what are you willing to do? We did an episode on that as well, like how bad do you want your goals? Because, yeah, sure, I'll put down physical goals that I want, but it doesn't take precedence over my family, to your point, right?
What's your biggest BS? We've never talked about it. We've asked other people, but we haven't really said, what's your biggest BS?
We're going to have a whole episode on that.
Oh, okay. All right.
You want this to be
this
2 hour
episode? This is going to be a long one.
This is going to be a big... Tune in when we do that episode.
Curtis is already jacked up for it. He's just going to be sitting here by himself. And this. I'm just going to walk away.
And then they told me I had a slight skeletal structure. No, anyways, yeah. So the last piece of the puzzle, I really do think that goal setting, having the right mindset towards your goals, and knowing, like, I'm going to have to put something into this to get there, and other things can come up and take priority. It's like, well, listen, that doesn't mean that everything's over. That just means you just push the time frame a bit. So, and knowing how to adapt is a really important piece that I think we should talk about more. As a exerciser, what's the biggest BS that people attack you with?
It's the excuses that people come up with about why they can't do things. Like, oh, I have scoliosis, so I can't squat. Oh, I have this, so I can't do deadlifts. Oh, my back always hurts here, so I can't do that. It's like, you just need to change your training program then, or you need to focus on the things that are making that hurt, because you're not even aware that, like, it might just be the fact that you can't brace into your lat properly and you can't get that recruitment. But people don't know that because they're not willing to learn about it.
They don't know how to move.
They don't know how to move, right? So it's like ignorance is bliss. Where, like, if you don't know, you're like, oh, I don't know what the problem is, so I'm just gonna leave it. But if you can address it and educate yourself on it, you can attack it. And then it's your choice whether you want to attack it or not, right? And a lot of people find, because like I talk to some people who have scoliosis, I'm like, you can do this, you just don't, we're not going to get you on a low bar, right? We'll probably just do like kettlebell squats for right now until we get, like, yeah, sure, like there might be some rotation in your spine, but it's not like a big deal. You can still sit on your rhomboids and into your shoulders. That's not going to twist your spine up, or unless you're purposely twisting it the opposite way, right? And then, so when people come up with those kind of excuses, I'm always like, man, there are ways around it. I hate telling people because pain is a perspective or a subjective thing. So like we don't know like how much pain that person really is, because I don't have scoliosis, right? So I can't really say like, oh yeah, like that person is bullshitting about how they feel. But like at the same time, it's like I've seen people who are worse off who can do more.
You got a major pain though. Let me give you something for that pain.
Major pain. Yeah. That's a learned helplessness scenario that we talked about way back in the day, and probably a team meeting. But it's like when you do something and you fail, and you do it again after you fail 3 times, and you're just gonna be like, you know what? It's me, or it's the world, or it's this specifically. So if people go and see a massage therapist, or they see a chiro, or they see a physio, and I saw this physio and that didn't fix it. This didn't fix it. This didn't fix it. And that's when they draw that hard line in the sand, being like, I'm done. Yeah, I'm smoked. So what would be like your advice to people? Because I've overcome that personally as well through a back injury via this guy, but biceps over here. What would be your advice to people who actually struggle with that?
My advice would to be find a good source that can educate you on your problem, right? Do the research that you are from credible people who you know that have done extensive research on this, and then do your own personal experience as well. Like the best way for you to really find out if this criteria fits you is to do it yourself, right? Because you could easily just be like, I heard stories from all these other people who have the same condition as me that they can't do it. But it's like, but they might be like a small percentage of all the people who are doing it, right? So we want to make sure that you don't fit in that group. Don't put yourself in that group without fully knowing. So that would be my advice, is to like, you need to try things for yourself, right? You don't have to go as hard as the next person beside you, but see where you're at, right? Like see if it's modifications that make things feel better, right? See if it's a specific time of the day. Like if you know, like I feel stronger in the morning than I do at night, where I'm not sitting on my chair for 4 hours, 6 hours on a computer and then my back's tight. It's like, yeah, maybe work out in the morning when you know that you're more nimble, or wherever the case is.
For me, one of the biggest life-changing things that I ever had anyone say to me was Rob Anger. Cool trainer name. But I was dealing with some significant back problems, and he looked at me and he's like, how about we talk more about what you can do and kind of leverage that instead of what you can't. Man, like to this day, I use that all the time. It's like I can really get zoned in on things that aren't available, but like let's start with what's there and see if we can get some sparks to move forward from that. And that, at the end of the day, that really defines the process of training and exercise for me in a big way.
Right.
I think the hardest part of what you're saying, though, is actually finding the people who have the answers, who can actually sort that out for you. And that's where you plug yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. So
plug your Instagram.
Yeah. So this is the last piece of the puzzle here. So you've been a trainer, you've worked through being an athlete, and eventually got to the point where like, I just want to be able to move still, which is good. Now your next endeavor, tell us about your next endeavor and what you're doing now.
I do orthopedic massage for Dynamic YYC. And so I focus more on like strength loading, doing soft tissue manipulation and everything like that to help people get out of their injuries, their injured state, and get them back into the game. And that's where, and it's weird how I ended up doing that, is because when I was working at a private gym, I was with a bunch of other massive black guys that were with me, and all of them were like over 6'3", 240 pounds, and were they better trainers than me? I would personally say no. But just because they had the look that everyone was looking for, people would be like, well, why should I not train with them instead of you? I'm like, well, I can program for you properly and treat your injuries and progress you accordingly. When I've seen people do lunges for 6 months straight and never progress, but you're paying this guy $120 an hour to do that, right? Just because he looks a certain way. So, and that's when I realized, okay, if you want to separate yourself from all the BS that's out there right now, because a lot of people are more about the instant gratification.
The hype of the industry.
The hype of the industry. You got to find a way to add more value, right? And the best way to add more value is to show that, like, I can do these things for you when these people can't, right? So you have no reason to not train with me, because if you have these problems, I'm the one person here that can help you, right? Rather than these guys will do some Google search about how to fix your SI joint dysfunction, and it's like, and then next thing you know, you got a broken back. So
the back is broken.
Spinal.
Yeah, here we go. You both got there. So that's a stellar place to kind of stop for the day. I really like the concept that you recognize a challenge and then you go about finding a solution for that challenge. I think that manual therapy is something that can really provide a lot of value outside of what you were already doing, and it really does give you a different realm that you can dabble in and help people, which I think is, you don't talk about that enough. You don't really like to get into the fluffy stuff, but I know that you're really here because you want to help people.
Yeah.
You don't say it all the time.
Yeah, I'd like helping people. Like
there you go. There
it brings a smile on my face.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah.
He likes to help people.
Yeah. And yeah, like it just makes it easy for me to get up, so knowing that like if someone comes into the clinic or to the gym and they have a problem, it was like Tenny when I used to train him, right? Like his entire thing was like my relationship is going under. Like how do I fix this physically, because we don't physically see each other the way that we used to, right? Him just getting his confidence back, him being able to move around better, made him more attractive to his wife. And those were the small things. To him it was huge, but to me it was like I've never had that problem, but like I see how it's a problem for you. But the fact that now that you or your wife are not talking about divorce anymore, the fact that you guys are able to look at each other the way you did 20 years ago is what makes me happy, knowing that like you changed somebody's life for the better, even though they might not physically see that change, but they mentally can feel it. They're like, I've never moved a manual auger before. I've dug 7 holes in one day, like, and without taking a break. I'm like, that's the change that like I love to see in people, right? It's the minor things that we take for granted, right? Not being able to get off the toilet without having your legs go numb, right? Not being able to walk down the stairs without having knee pain, right? I've seen people walk into the clinic limping and then they leave skipping, and it's like that's what makes me happy, is because it's like that's like an instant change, and that starts from up here. Yeah. Rather than being like, oh, I physically feel that, but now I still feel mentally drained because it's been draining me for weeks, months, or how many years, right? But when you see that mental switch, it's like, okay, now this person's bought into it, because now they can see, they can feel everything, and they're going to keep coming back. They're going to see like this is a process that needs to keep going on.
Yeah.
Well, for me, it is very fulfilling to watch people develop and change and progress. And for me, it's been a really cool thing to see you come in originally as just some kid trying to exercise and things like that, and watching you progress all the way through the industry and finding your ways that you can help people more, and kind of navigating that through with a certain amount of tenacity that allowed you to kind of figure out what's the next step where I can help people and stuff. And I'm happy that I get to see you a little bit more again. It's good.
It's
we
awesome.
get to talk some trash. And, talking trash is one of the things we did talk about today that's valuable.
Yeah. And I think what I personally think is wrong with the industry now is there are way too many people trying to copy the same handbook, right? You watch a lot of these influencers that are out there. All of them are doing reels, taking the same sound bits, quotes, repeating them, and thinking that they're going to get the same traction as the guy beside them, right? And they're missing the point. Is you're more telling about your journey rather than trying to reach out to the public eye, being like, this doesn't relate to me, so how can I buy into that, right? If you can't get people to buy in, or can't at least get people to understand that like this journey wasn't just for me, it was like, it's for me to tell you that I've started where you were at, right? A lot of these guys are coming in and starting their fitness pages when they're already like have their pro card, right? Like, so you already are pro and you're starting this, and then you're trying to tell me about hard work when like you've already been working that hard for so long. But if you showed me like your journey from the start, from the finish, then I can see, okay, this guy started from nothing and then he made it here, rather than being like, oh, I already have my pro card and I'm going to tell you how I started from nothing. But it's like, okay, well, that's not what you show. People love to see what you post. And if you're posting nothing but your successes, right, they're all going to think like, well, this guy just runs a perfect life. Like, I can't relate to that.
Social media in itself is a very narcissistic tool that everyone just like, look at me, look at me, look what I'm doing, look at me.
Yeah.
Don't forget about hedonistic. I just want to feel good. I'm a narcissist. I only care about myself, and I just want to feel good.
You don't even post on social media, so you don't get in this conversation.
I do.
No, you don't.
Bi-monthly. Okay, well, thank you very much for being here, man. It was good to have a little bit of a chit-chat. We'll likely do it again at some point. And, after our conversation today, Eric is all excited to talk about things that bother me with the industry.
I like watching Curtis get upset. It's funny.
Because it doesn't happen often.
He's usually the one that plays that role.
Am I? I don't know.
Yeah, you're the one that's like, I'll say it, Liver King's an idiot.
Liver
And I'll
King
be like,
is an
hey,
idiot.
well, you know.
Dre, we
it's-
appreciate you. Bro.
Absolutely. Thank you guys. Appreciate it, guys.
Thanks for joining us this week. We appreciate your support.
If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you would subscribe, follow, and throw us a like on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts.